So, it is yet another cold, rainy, foggy day here in my fine isle of Englandshire, which is actually rather fitting when you consider the subject matter of today's video, which is 10 disturbing songs. And what makes these songs so disturbing is that all 10 of them are based on real life events. Any of you who watched any of my videos will know that I like to put a certain amount of humour into my videos. However, due to the topics that I'm going to be discussing today, it just doesn't seem fitting. So anyway, having said that, we're going to go straight into it with a very obvious one for the first one, and that is Daddy by Korn. This is a pretty obvious pick, but for good reason. I think any of you out there who've heard this song will know what I'm talking about. This is a tough listen. It really is a really, really tough listen to get through. Jonathan Davis's vocal performance is so heartfelt, so gut-wrenching, so emotional that you cannot fail to be hit by this one. It is so damn disturbing. And then when you go into the actual background of what actually this is about, it gets even worse because it's based on real life events. This isn't some fantasy bullshit. This is actual real shit. I have to be very careful with the words I use in this because YouTube gets very funny about specific keywords. So this one recounts an experience or multiple experiences that Jonathan had when he was a child with being mistreated, shall we say, by his babysitter. One of the biggest misconceptions of this song is that because of the title that this mistreatment was at the hands of his father, but that's not actually the case. The daddy aspect of the song is in reference to the fact that Jonathan told his family, he told his mum and dad about what was going on, about the mistreatment that was happening. And they didn't believe him and subsequently did nothing about it. So therefore the mistreatment continued. So when you listen to it in that respect, you have what Jonathan was going to and the pleading to his parents of why aren't you listening to me? Why aren't you hearing me? Why aren't you doing anything about it? Pretty damn horrific. Now, this would understandably be a source of embarrassment to Jonathan's father for many years because people obviously assumed that it was him that was doing all of this. However, Jonathan would later on state that this was actually about a family friend. Jonathan and his father both decided that they would not go on record to say who it actually was, but Jonathan did actually state in a video leading up to the 20th anniversary of this, the album, the debut that it came from, that the person who was involved had since died. I think one of the most truly disturbing aspects of this song is the outro. Essentially what happens is the band carry on playing, so we get the instrumentation aside, just carrying on going as Jonathan breaks down in the vocal booth and just... You can almost imagine him in the fetal position, just crying and just in despair at the memories that this has conjured up. From what I understand, the band were not aware that this song was based on real life events at the time of recording. So, you know, with that in mind, it's a truly harrowing lesson. Not only is this a tough song to listen to, it's understandably an incredibly difficult one for Jonathan to be able to perform. I don't believe they actually played it live at all until the 20th anniversary shows that they did for the album. So, I mean, you could completely understand that. Jonathan's always been one of those frontmen who he obviously really digs deep into his psyche and draws from a lot of his pain and experiences. So I can imagine going back to this, but oh my God. Anyway, truly disturbing song, an obvious pick, but it absolutely had to be on here. There was no way it couldn't be. Next up, we have Diane, and this was originally recorded by the alternative / punk band Husker Du. Was it from 1983 on their Metal Circus EP, and it was later covered by the incredible Irish band Therapy, a very, very underappreciated band nowadays. And in my opinion, their cover version of this was infinitely better than the original. It's such a haunting listen. The song was written by Husker Du drummer Grant Hart and concerns the murder of West St. Paul waitress Diane Edwards by Joseph Tour Jr. in 1980. Joseph Donald Tour Jr. was an American serial killer and kidnapper who was convicted of murdering 6 people in Minnesota between 1978 and 1980. He's currently serving 6 life sentences at Minnesota Correctional Facility. The events covered in this song took place on September the 26th, 1980, where Tua picked up 19-year-old Diane Edwards, a University of Minnesota student, while she was walking home from her job as a waitress at a nearby Perkins restaurant in West St. Paul. He took her to the nearby woods where he did what you would assume and then stabbed her to death. So absolutely horrific. As I've already mentioned, I think the therapy version is far superior. The string arrangements just add such a haunting atmosphere to it. However, the lyrics conjure up such vivid imagery that either version is a truly uncomfortable listen. If you haven't heard this track, then go and listen to it. And I mean, it's another one that's just so disturbing, made even more so by the fact that, yet again, this is based on a real life event. Next up, we have another very obvious pick, for obvious reasons, Polly by Nirvana. I remember hearing this for the first time when I was 15 years old, which is when the album came out. And at the time, I wasn't aware of the subject matter, but it was pretty clear listening to this song straight away that it was just something wasn't right with this one. I didn't understand the references at the time, but even then it was like, oh no, this isn't good. The lyrics themselves detail the kidnapping of a 14-year-old girl who was returning from a punk gig in Tacoma, Washington, 1987. And the song is written from the perspective of the perpetrator, Gerald Friend, who is currently serving 2 consecutive 75-year terms at Airway Heights Corrections Center. I believe, from what I understand, he was arrested for something similar many years before this event. He was let off on parole and then he did this. I mentioned earlier on the lyrics, Polly wants a cracker. I think I should get off her first. I think she wants some water to put out the blowtorch. Like I said, I didn't understand the references when I was younger, but damn, are those, ugh. Supposedly, Kurt Cobain read about this incident in the newspaper and then went to write about it. I think retrospectively it has been cited as evidence of Cobain's support of feminism and women's rights, although there is no evidence of Cobain openly declaring he was making a feminist statement with the lyrics. Regardless of what his intentions were with the lyrics, it's a disturbing song, disturbing event, truly tragic. Next up is probably one of the ones that I found the most disturbing, and that is Well Fancy That by Funboy 3. Funboy 3 features 3 of the members of The Specials, Terry Hall, Neville Staple, and Linville Golding. This song is incredibly dark and is somehow made even eerier by its happy waltz-like tempo. The song recounts a harrowing experience that Terry had when he was 12 years old that involved him going on a trip to France, which was arranged by his teacher. And his teacher was not to be trusted, that's for damn sure. Again, I'm trying to think of ways to put this. His teacher turned out to be part of a ring of people who had less than good intentions towards children. Terry Hall is one of those figures that's kind of been etched into my brain from early on, because I was born in 1976. So whenever I was watching Top of the Pops or anything like that, The Specials and Funboy 3, they'd constantly be featured on there. And I always remember being perplexed by his look, by that dour, miserable look that he had. However, when you understand this song and what actually happened to him, it all makes so much sense. The grief and the despair that he must have been carrying, that he did carry with him throughout the entirety of his life. He often spoke about how he dealt with severe depression, and it's something that he dealt with right up until his untimely death. What was it? December the 18th, 2022, at the age of 63. Truly horrific to think that this event haunted him his entire life, as these things would do. It's just, if you haven't checked this song out, then do, because it is truly a harrowing listen. And as I said, the waltz-like happy tempo of it somehow makes it even more disturbing. It's a terrible song, and it's tragic to think that this shit goes on. It fucking sickens me to my stomach. My next 2 picks are not only from the same band, they're from the same album. The band is Poison Idea, the album is Feel the Darkness, and the first track I'm picking is the title track, Feel the Darkness. There is a fantastic podcast episode of Rob Flynn's No Fucking Regrets from a few years back. You can't listen to it on Spotify anymore, but it is available on YouTube, where he interviewed Jerry A from Poison Idea. It's a fantastic episode. Jerry A is such a surprisingly eloquent speaker, very softly spoken, eloquent speaker when you consider how chaotic and fucked up Poison Idea were. Now, both this and the next song, Jerry explained the meanings of these songs. So I haven't been able to find much of these online, but everything I've got from this is from that podcast. I'll put a link to it in the description because it's highly worth checking out. Like I said, Jerry A is a fantastic speaker. Really enjoyed it. Now, according to Jerry, this song is about a dancer that he used to know who sadly became addicted to heroin. As is often the way, she ended up resorting to prostitution to feed her habit. I'm sure you can imagine that this doesn't end well. When she was out hustling for money, she got picked up in Portland by a guy who turned out to be a serial killer. And he was known as the Malala Forest Killer, real name Dayton Leroy Rogers, who was finally caught in 1988 for the murder of his last victim, Jennifer Lisa Smith, and then later in 1989 was tied to a further 6 victims. Sadly, Jerry's friend was one of those victims, and when you actually listen to the lyrics, knowing this in mind, the song makes so much more sense. You walk the streets because of your bad habits, wash the past with another hot rinse. You meet a man who'll make your dreams come true. Your worst nightmare has just begun for you. This is one of those songs that I've been listening to for years without knowing the true meaning of it. And once I did find out, it just made it all the more disturbing to listen to. Absolutely fucking horrific. As I've already mentioned, all of this was discussed on Rob Flynn's podcast, which is fitting because the next song is actually a song that Machine Head covered, and you've probably heard that version, a lot of you, and that is Alan's On Fire, again from the Feel the Darkness album. This is another true story, and the titular Alan of the song was apparently, I believe he was constantly being berated by his wife. I think he just had a wife who put him down all the time. The events in this song are about a backyard party that the family were having with friends. I think it was a barbecue, something like that. And his wife was once again giving him a hard time, really putting him down in front of everybody. Apparently what happened was he went to the garage, got himself a canister of gasoline, poured it all over himself, and then lit himself on fire. Whew! All my life I have been used by you. Time has come, our game of love is through. A burning passion from a burning mass reaches up for the sky. I called you here, my devoted family, turn to watch me die. I'm not a martyr, but I am truth, and you are a liar. So now my life of constant sadness goes up in the fire. Fuck! It's crazy to think that there are so many people out there who just go through life with this quiet sadness. I guarantee this guy was probably one of those people who never said a word, never mentioned anything that was going on, and he got to a point where that was his way out. Pretty goddamn horrific. And Poison Idea are one of those bands that I could have probably done an entire video based on their lyrics because so much of their stuff is based on real life events, but I thought these two were fitting for this. Next pick is another blindingly obvious one, but again, for obvious reasons. It's Jeremy by Pearl Jam. So this song is written about a 15-year-old high school student, Jeremy Wade Dell from Richardson, Texas, who shot himself in front of his English class on January 8th, 1991. Apparently Dell was a very reclusive child, and according to his former classmates, he was known as real quiet and known for acting sad. On the morning in question, he actually arrived to his lessons late and was therefore sent to the principal office to report for tardiness. He did leave the classroom, but he didn't go to his principal office. Instead, he went and got a .357 Magnum, brought it back to the class with him, and then stood in front of everybody. And what was it he said? "Miss, I got what I really went for." And then he raised the gun to himself and shot himself before anybody could do anything about it. Eddie Vedder would later go on record to state that there was actually a second inspiration for this song, and something somewhat similar. There was a kid that he used to go to school with. I don't think he knew him very well, but he had had some altercations with him in the past. They'd gotten into a few fights with each other. Another truly troubled child. I think it'd probably be easier for me to read a quote directly from Eddie here. "His world blew up. He kind of freaked out and brought a gun into class one day. It was geography class and he shot up a 1,000-gallon fish tank or something. I was in the hallway and I remember hearing it." In this instance, I don't believe anybody was actually harmed, but a tragically similar story. The idea that you have these, I believe in both cases, from what Eddie was saying, the common thread was a lack of parental attention. These were kids who were just ignored by their parents at a time where we really need that guidance. We really need something, we really need somebody to get us through life and point us in the right direction. And it seems like, tragically, both of these cases were. We've heard it so many times. Parental neglect is a truly horrific thing. The next pick is Hey Man, Nice Shot by Filter. Now, I actually revealed in a very recent video that Filter is one of those bands that kind of passed me by, not because I think they're a bad band, far from it. They're just, I'm sure you've had that experience as well. There are bands that you should have checked out, but you never really got into. However, this song was one that has always been on my radar, and I was also well aware of what the song was about. The lyrics for the song deal with the public suicide of Pennsylvania State Treasurer R. Bud Dwyer on January the 22nd, 1987 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Dwyer was facing an incredibly long jail sentence for supposed bribery charges from U.S. District Court Judge Malcolm Muir, who was notorious for giving out tough punishments. Dwyer held a press conference where he would proclaim his innocence, at the end of which he ended up pulling out a .357 Magnum and shot himself live on TV. Some would speculate that his real reason for doing this would be so that his widow Joanna would be able to collect survivor benefits, which she would end up doing, collecting more than $1.28 million, which at the time was the largest death benefit payment ever made by the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System. Apparently the family's finances were completely obliterated due to the legal costs of the court battle. And apparently state law would have prohibited the payment of this state-provided pension benefit if he'd have actually been sentenced. So the suicide went before the sentencing. I think that's how it went. However, his sister, Mary Kuhn, would go on to defend her brother, however, saying that he made this decision for suicide well before he actually knew about this law. So I don't know. I don't know what that was. She states that he would rather sacrifice himself to help the system. A lot of people do actually believe that Dwyer was innocent and that he was being framed for broader corruption and it was all being put on him. Sadly, this sort of shit goes on. We all know it does. It's just, oh my God, it's truly disturbing. But another thing of this song that might have actually contributed to its popularity, because it came out in '95, so this would have been a year after Kurt Cobain obviously taking his own life. A lot of people thought that the lyrics were actually in reference to that, which they were not. My penultimate pick is Mein Teil by Rammstein. Now, Rammstein are one of those bands that, again, I could have chosen quite a few of their songs because a lot of them are based on real life events and they're always disturbing, but Mein Teil seemed to be the one that made the most sense for this list. The song title itself, Mein Teil, can be translated as My Part or My Share, and this deals with the Armin Maiwies cannibalism case. Maiwies put out an ad on a website forum called The Cannibal Cafe, and Bernd Jürgen Armando Brandes answered. The two men met up for dinner and cut off Brandes' penis and attempted to consume it together. Afterwards, Maiwies killed Brandes, who had given full consent for this, by the way, and then stored his remains and ate them over a period of months before he was arrested. Even more disturbingly, the entire incident was filmed. Now, the case caused quite a controversy, not just for the obvious reasons, but also you had the fact that Brandes gave consent for this, which is a very interesting turn of events when you think about it. Maiwies was originally sentenced to 8.5 years in jail for manslaughter, but a retrial was ordered in April 2005 after prosecutors appealed Maiwies' sentence, arguing that he should have been convicted of murder because he killed for sexual gratification, a motive proved by his having videotaped the crime. The court ruled that the original trial had ignored the significance of the video in disproving the argument that Maiwies only killed because he'd been asked to kill, and was charged with murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The video for this one is also another classic Rammstein disturbing affair, and if you haven't checked that one out, do. As I said, I could have chosen quite a few Rammstein songs, but this one made the most sense. People, man. People. And my final pick is a blindingly obvious one, Angel of Death by Slayer. Much like Rammstein, Slayer have done a ton of songs that I could have included on this one. They've never been strangers to controversy. and they've always written about very horrific events. The album Divine Intervention has a ton of really disturbing songs on that one. Very underrated album, by the way. I was originally tempted to go with Dead Skin Mask, which of course is about serial killer Ed Gein, but the more I thought about it, the only reason that I was picking that was because it was a less obvious choice. But when you really dig into the subject matter, it has to be Angel of Death. I mean, it is truly the stuff of nightmares. I'm sure that many of you will know what this song is about, but for those who don't, this song is about the Nazi physician Josef Mengele, who experimented on human subjects at the Auschwitz concentration camp during World War II. He was particularly interested in identical twins, people with heterochromia iridium, which is basically eyes with two different colours. I'm sure I butchered that. Dwarves, and people with physical abnormalities. Twin research was of particular interest to him, as one twin could serve as subject, while the other as the control. He would receive the nickname Angel of Death because of these gruesome experiments, which included surgeries performed without anesthesia, transfusion of blood between twins, isolation endurance, gassing, injections with lethal germs, sex change operations, the removal of organs and limbs, and abomination, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, which is a form of corporal punishment or torture in which the victim is blinded by infliction of intentional damage to the eyes. I mean, there's so much more. If you read anything about this piece of shit, it's truly horrific what these poor people went through. He was described as having no empathy whatsoever, just a very, very cold, calculated individual who was basically just given test subjects to work on, and he had no feelings for them whatsoever. They were literal guinea pigs for him. Now, Slayer would go on to receive accusations of racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism for this song, but I think it's clear to anybody who's actually taken time to read the lyrics that this song is much more of a documentary as it is any kind of support of what they were doing or glorification. I mean, anybody who thinks that is just an idiot in my eyes. But an absolutely harrowing song, an obvious one, but for obvious reasons. It's just, come on. Humans are fucked, you know? Humans really are fucked. And the world right now is fucked. Anyway, let's not get into that. So there we go. 10 songs that were truly disturbing. Let me know what your picks would be. Let me know what you thought of this. I know this is a pretty harsh subject. Not the sort of thing that I normally do. It's certainly not a fun one. But strangely, it's an interesting one. You know, I think there's a reason that we're always fascinated by songs like these and subject matters like these. And yeah, all of it, again, based on real life events. Truly horrific. Anyway, that'll do for this video. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts, and I will catch you on the next one.